This is Kanji Sasahara. He's a freshman at the fictional Shio University in Japan in the year 2002. In fact, I'm going to take a second just to mention that this manga was published from 2002 to 2016, and it does such a good job at showing what otaku culture was in the early 2000s. Kiyoshimoku's art style develops as the manga goes on into the 2010s, but I'm glad he still kept the story in the early 2000s because things like cosplay and anime figures are timeless otaku staples, but lining up outside a store for a CD-ROM game, very specific to its time. Before we dive into it, hi, my name is Izzy. Welcome to my channel where I talk about and dive into animation in TV shows, movies, and anything else I like. There will be spoilers for Genshiken, so if you don't want to be spoiled, this is your warning. So, in the beginning of this manga, Sasahara timidly walks the halls of the club fair, looking at all the booths, trying to scope out all the available clubs to join, although right off the bat, we know he's looking for a very specific club to join. He gathers enough courage to go up to the booth of the club he wants to join, but immediately some guy walks in front of him and asks the club one simple question. So, what kind of activities do you do at the manga club? Sasahara, having lost his courage again, makes a hard left and walks away. Then he notices another booth, a sign on the table that reads, "The Society for the Study of Modern Visual Culture." He flips through the club directory pamphlet to find more information about this club, but instead finds a picture of an anime girl. This is one of my favorite manga of all time, so I could go into all the characters and storylines and details. I can even go into the manga within this manga, which I also have the manga too, named Kujibiki Unbalanced. It's about a very unlucky boy who wins a lottery to become part of next year's student body at a prestigious high school. It's meant to be a parody and an homage to the stereotypical types of anime an otaku would like. At first, it was my intention to cover the first 3 volumes of Genshiken, but then I scrapped that idea because I find Kanji Sasahara's journey far more interesting than just doing a general retrospective of this manga. Actually, there's a specific point in this manga where everything changes for this character, and I would argue this is where Sasahara's character growth truly begins. And it's on this page, Chapter 2, page 45. In the official translated version published by Del Rey, it's in quotation marks, and when something is in quotation marks in this manga, it's because the characters are usually quoting something. The guys in the club are such otakus, they quote their favorite manga and anime all the time, so it might just be him having a little otaku moment and quoting something from a manga, but the sentiment still stands. He realizes up to this point, from elementary to high school, he hasn't been living as his true self. Then he says to himself, "The moment I set foot in Kosaka's room, I realized that what I lack is the courage to accept myself for who I am." Kosaka's room is a stereotypical otaku's room, but an early 2000s otaku's room, which is so satisfying to see portrayed. This manga was published in 2002, so this is as authentic as you can get. I can actually make a whole other video talking about the different rooms we get to see in this manga. But back to Sasahara, he's clearly uncomfortable making himself at home in Kosaka's room. I don't blame him just because he doesn't really know him at this point, but early Sasahara is really shy and insecure in his decisions and social interactions. After Kosaka beats him in a video game, Kosaka, being the confident guy he is, decides to call over the rest of the guys from Genshiken to hang out and play with Sasahara. See, Kosaka's crazy good at video games, and he thinks the other guys are more of a match for Sasahara. Just so you're not out of the loop in case you haven't read the manga, we've got the 3 main boys from Genshiken: Madarame, Kugayama, and Tanaka. Madarame is exactly what you'd picture when you think of an otaku. He's constantly, and I mean constantly, talking about anime and manga. He's also constantly broke because he's buying zines. Not even just regular zines, they're adult zines. He judges other otakus for not being as otaku as he is. He doesn't say this out loud himself, but when he sees Saki and Kosaka kissing, Tanaka comments that he has a hard time with this type of stuff. He's like the proto-gooner of his time, I guess you could say. Kugayama is the artist of the group. He has a stutter that makes him feel self-conscious, so he doesn't speak much. And according to Madarame, he doesn't have a lot of ambition or self-worth to commit to actually drawing a full manga story and just doodles here and there. Tanaka is the cosplay aficionado of the group. He loves to sew cosplay outfits and take photographs of his favorite cosplayers, and he's also a big fan of anime figures. Kosaka is actually somewhat of a weird anomaly to the guys. In fact, they have this funny bit where they have meetings to question if he's actually an otaku. Kosaka is conventionally attractive, he's confident, a good dresser, and athletic, which you find out from Saki. He doesn't fit into the stereotype of what an otaku would be. Yet, his room, his hobbies, and his unashamed love for manga and anime shine through every time he opens his mouth. It's funny to see when girls try to hit on him and are immediately confused when he starts talking about video game characters and listening to voice actresses on CD, and even showing off the merch he buys. Not to mention attending conventions, which is the ultimate nerd activity. You know you're really in it when you start doing that. Well, at least in the United States, it was like that when I was younger. Back in 2007, when I went to my first convention, it definitely wasn't as mainstream as it is now. I have so many stories to tell about early convention life and how the vibe was back then for quote-unquote otakus, but I guess that's for another video. Anyways, what I'm saying is that Kosaka is the opposite of Sasahara in that Kosaka embraces what he loves, and Sasahara just isn't quite there yet. Now that we kind of established the characters, let's go back to when Sasahara reads that description in the club pamphlet he was given. After seeing an anime girl from one of his favorite anime series, Kujibiki Unbalanced, shout out to Izumi Tachibana, she was one of my favorite character designs, he decides to check out Genshiken. He bumps into Kosaka outside the door to the club room. Actually, Sasahara, being his insecure, shy self, is just about to turn around and leave when he bumps into Kosaka. So if he wasn't there, then this story would have never happened. Thanks, Kosaka. Kosaka asks him what he's doing there, and Sasahara says he's just there to look around. Kosaka has already joined, so he tells the guys that Sasahara is there for a tour. What happens next is kind of insane. Basically, all the guys have this initiation process where they all leave the room and spy on the unsuspecting new member from across the building and see what they do when they're left alone in the room. And of course, since these are all college guys and otakus, they start looking for the adult scenes and basically just start being giant weirdos. Sasahara is so embarrassed when he gets caught doing exactly that. All the guys tell him not to take it personally because they've also been caught doing the same thing. It just means he's one of them. Except for Kosaka, who says he didn't fall for it. I've always questioned this bit because what does that mean? Was he aware enough that someone was spying on him to not do anything? Or is he just a good boy who wouldn't have done anything anyways? Anyways, that's how Sasahara joins Genshiken. Even though he initially feels like he doesn't quite fit in, and doesn't even like the idea of being associated with them, he still lets the boys guide him through the world of being an otaku. They take him for his first zine shopping, his first convention, and even encourage him to get his first PC, just to play, of course, adult video games, the ultimate male otaku experience. I love the way the mangaka Kiyoshimoku writes this character. On one hand, he's the everyman character, in which he's kind of the introduction to the world of being an otaku. Like, you're learning along with him on what it's like being in the subculture. On the other hand, you get to see this very insecure and shy character fresh out of high school blossom into a well-rounded college graduate with a job. Back to that chapter 2, page 45 panel, it shows in that moment that Sasahara had a realization about himself, an epiphany, if you will. You might think it started when he joined Genshiken, but let's remember that Kosaka was the one that pushed him into checking out the club. And the guys sort of decided Sasahara was part of the club once he passed initiation, despite him not officially saying he would join. After that incident, Sasahara is eating in the cafeteria and Kosaka sits right next to him, which shocks him. I think it's his insecurity telling him that it's crazy that a guy like Kosaka would want to sit with someone like Sasahara, let alone just come up to him and talk to him like they're friends. Kosaka asks him why he hasn't been at Genshiken lately, and Sasahara simply says he feels like he doesn't fit in. He actually says Kosaka doesn't seem like he fits in either, which is funny because he's judging Kosaka on the surface and probably doesn't realize yet that Kosaka fits in just as much as he does. In my opinion, Kosaka invites him over to his dorm as an icebreaker to ease Sasahara into the group. He probably picked up that since Sasahara hasn't been going to meetings, he's still on the fence about hanging out with the guys. Although, I don't know, Kosaka can be generally clueless. Being in Kosaka's dorm with the Genshiken boys, after having his epiphany moment, he makes his first real decision to come out of his shell. So he says to himself, I've made up my mind, I'm going to fit in with these guys, so I've got to have the courage to start a conversation with them. If chapter 2, page 45 was the epiphany, then this panel is a catalyst for change. His first big decision, fueled by courage, is to tell Saki that he and the guys are leaving when she wants to swing by Kosaka's place, just to give Saki some alone time with Kosaka. Everyone looks at him in shock, and even Saki thinks he's weird, but I love that Sasahara went for it, even though he could have just given up after having such an awkward social interaction. A lot of people do, actually. After having that one cringy social interaction, you kind of just want to swear off talking to anyone ever again. Personally speaking, I tend to do that, and I don't recommend it. After leaving Kosaka's dorm with the Genshiken boys, he's expecting a negative reaction, but the boys just look at him and pretty much decide that Kosaka is actually the weirdo for wanting to stick his normie girlfriend in there with a bunch of otakus. He then gets another shot of courage and asks them if he could check out the adult video games the boys have been talking about. They agree, amused, and decide to hang out at Kugiyama's place for the rest of the night instead. Otaku college boys are gonna be pervs at the end of the day. Putting that aside, he gathered the courage to ask for that. This starts a whole chain of events, because from here on out, Kanji Sasahara asks the boys for everything, and I mean everything. He asks to borrow games, zines, he discusses anime releases with them, and even goes to conventions with them. The more Sasahara puts himself out there, the more he's able to make decisions, meet new people, and be the person he truly is, even if that means buying adult zines and adult PC games. But don't worry, he never fully crosses that creep line though, because in the later volumes we meet Chika Ogiue, who becomes Sasahara's girlfriend. Eventually, I mean, come on, he has to ease into this stuff. I love her so much too. All the women in this manga are amazing and honestly deserve their own journey analysis. Ogiue is the artist of the group, more so than Kugiyama, and she's also a fujoshi. She has a whole backstory on why she's ashamed of the stuff she draws, but we salute you, Ogiue. You even managed to ship your crush with his best friend. As time goes by, Sasahara becomes more involved in the club, he speaks up for himself, he forges his bond with his friends, and eventually, when Madarame steps down as president, he passes down the torch to Sasahara, and even though he's unsure he should be president, it's clear to Genshiken and us the viewer that he's perfect for the job. Expected even. I mean, we do get the feeling it would eventually happen. He would have never been able to accomplish any of this if it weren't for that one moment in that room. I think a lot of the time we're scared to speak up or take chances or fail at something. Sometimes we don't even want to bother with the effort because we think it won't be worth it in the end. But that's what I love about Sasahara. He didn't at any moment give up or shy away from saying something after he put his mind to it. And because of that, he was able to make friends, have the courage to be himself, and even get a job as a manga editor without being able to draw, which, is that even possible? How would you even show your credentials, especially being fresh out of college? Was it that easy to get a job back then? For all these characters, they have their moments of wanting to hide their true selves, but are encouraged by one another to embrace this weird and awkward growing part of their life. He has such tremendous character growth that after Sasahara is president of Genshiken, he passes down the position to Ono. I really want to geek out about how he even becomes Ogiue's boyfriend, but that feels more like an Ogi story more than a Sasahara one. Still, there are a lot of parallels with accepting yourself as you are that are happening with Ogiue as they happened with Sasahara. She has her own insecurities she must overcome, but Sasahara knows she'll be alright. After all, he was once in her shoes. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. A like, comment, or subscription would mean the world to me. I'm really trying to post more consistently, and your support helps more than you know. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.